All right, we're live, man. I'm very excited. Again, we're here for the 55th annual Black, Hispanic, Asian Caucus up here in Albany, the capital city. It's not that cold, Drew.
Nah, we good, man. I told you.
It's not that cold.
It was brutal. It was brutal the first couple years, but it's been warming up, man. It's good. It's
Nah,
bearable right now. It's
bearable.
bearable. Yeah, it's
We got the
bearable.
boldies, so we got to still cover them up.
You know, I keep it covered when I'm out there for the most part, man.
Yeah, we live in Albany, policy and culture. We have a very, very special guest.
Very special
Super
guest.
blessed. Looking forward to learning a lot about this gentleman, the work that he's been doing, just the leadership that he's been exemplifying. When we talk about policy and culture, is literally the definition of policy and culture and everything that we're constantly trying to champion and educate our listeners and followers. It's not always just about being culturally relevant. It's also about understanding our civic role, our civic identity, how much power is in policy that combines with cultural advocacy and relevancy. So without further ado, today we're blessed to be joined by a leader whose work sits at the powerful intersection of grassroots activism and state-level policy making. We're talking about Assemblyman Brian A. Cunningham of the 43rd District in New York, representing Central Brooklyn.
Is Brooklyn in the house?
Sir.
Brooklyn's always in the house.
Born and raised in New York City to Jamaican immigrant parents, Assemblymember Cunningham has dedicated his life to building a safer, stronger, and more equitable Brooklyn. From launching the city's first Cure Violence site to advising President Obama's My Brother's Keeper Alliance, he has been deeply committed to disrupting cycles of violence, expanding education opportunity, and creating systems that uplift youth and working families. And shout out to My Brother's Keeper too, man. They do a lot of incredible work.
Big shout out my brothers keepers, Eldridge, man. Shout out the whole program.
Elected to the Assembly in 2022, Assemblyman Cunningham now brings that same energy to Albany, where he's been helping to secure over $1 billion in state funding for his district. Funding that's been invested in housing, education, healthcare, and community development. And that's $1 billion, not $1 million. He currently serves as the first vice chair of the New York State Association of Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian legislators, and was the founding treasurer of the New York State Black Legislative Task Force, helping shape the legislative and financial foundation of Black leadership in this capital. Assemblymember Cunningham's work is guided by personal experience, professional expertise, and a deep belief in the potential of Central Brooklyn. Whether through mentoring young people, supporting small nonprofits, or pushing bold legislation, he continues to center public service as a pathway to justice and impact. So Assemblymember Cunningham, welcome to Policy and Culture.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I almost wore my Michael Jordan double nickels this weekend, given the caucus numbers, but great to be on the show. Excited to see you guys. And yeah, Brooklyn's definitely in the building, baby. Let's do this.
Yeah. Now, the Bronx has been trying to talk a little bit.
Yikes. I got love for that. I'm not going to disrespect the speakers from the Bronx. You know, I'm not trying to lose that $1 billion funding, right, for the borough. Like, I'm not silly, but
yeah,
it is what it is. Yeah.
Very interested in learning about your journey from even just as a young man, as a young boy growing up in Brooklyn. What was that like? Is Central Brooklyn, does that encompass Flatbush as well?
Oh, Flatbush is the center of the world, right?
Okay.
But certainly the center of Brooklyn. So I represent Flatbush, Crown Heights, and Prospect Lefferts Gardens, which is like a suburb of Flatbush, right, in some respects. But it's been an honor to both be elected to the state assembly. But obviously, I think when you're born somewhere, when you're raised somewhere and represent them, you certainly bring a different level of oomph to the job, right? I grew up with immigrant parents. My mother and father are both in Jamaica. My father was a cab driver. We called them gypsy cab drivers back in the day. My mom was a home health aide who got into compliance of home care. And I grew up with a sister, right? So like I had a normal childhood in terms of just like having a deeply personal connection to the neighborhood, went to the bodegas. My life kind of revolves around a 3-mile radius of my district, right? So like we think about it, I went to school here, I went to church like 2 blocks up. My wife and I met on the corner of Lenox and Nostrand. I grew up on Linden, literally like met at the intersection of our lives, went to school at MS2. So it's been a phenomenal journey just to kind of, again, bring the energy from Brooklyn, from Flatbush, definitely into the state capitol.
Love it. Is East 28th Street? Is that
no? That's considered East Flatbush. I got a portion of East Flatbush, but I got Flatbush proper.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was one of my best friends grew up over there.
Yeah.
At what age would you say was your family centered around civics, political work, and public policy? What was the structure like?
Yeah, great question. My mom was centered around church, right?
Church,
My mom
okay.
was a church lady, church going, church believer. I was in church every night besides Thursday. We was in church on Sunday for service.
Man. I'm a pastor's son, so
so you know the vibe, right? We're there for Wednesday Bible study, Tuesday, Thursday basketball, Friday youth ministry, Saturday feeding programs. But my mom understood she understood the power of the table, right? So every Sunday after church, we had everyone sit at the table, and they were obviously talking about the church service and the Holy Ghost and all that stuff. But they also talked about what was happening culturally, what was happening in the world, and bringing that perspective. So as a young kid growing up in that household, listening to adults and our seniors talk about some of the challenges they were facing, quite not understanding what that meant, right? I wasn't adulting yet, but certainly getting a chance to sit there and listen to those conversations, listen to how faith and values played a role in that. It certainly shaped my identity very early in life.
Coming from the neighborhood that you're coming from, I'm pretty familiar in the Crown Heights section.
Yeah.
Prospect, Utica, that laundromat over there, it's a park over there, right?
Yeah.
We just asked our last guest this situation, you being a young black man kind of diving into this field, right? Was there things that kind of deviated you from your path growing up to where it was like, you know, I wanted to be a follower. I wanted to follow the tough kids. I wanted to try to sell drugs. I wanted to be involved with this. What was it that kind of, I understand you had good parents, but what was the process that kind of kept you, you know, focused and straight? Or did you veer off?
Yeah, my mom was, my dad left when I was about 8 years old. So that was tough, right? Because you had to like learn how to tighten the belt, the financial belt, and figure things out. My dad was present, but he just wasn't home anymore. So that was a whole nother challenge for me growing up as a young person. But I think, again, my mother realizing the power of church and the power of like the things associated with church. So like Tuesday, Thursday, I'm playing ball. Right? I didn't think about the fact that it was a church more than I was just around guys my age sweating the gym. It stink, right? Obviously. But playing ball and just kind of doing that stuff, having a center of youth where we were at a Friday night youth meeting and meeting people. Obviously, there were girls there too, so we was interested in the girls that were there, right? But there was these values being imposed like subconsciously that I just didn't realize. So my mother just kept me super, super busy and keeping me so busy with that in the YMCA and the Flatbush Youth, the Crown Heights Youth Collective and all the different things. I didn't have time for trouble. And my mother was also super strict. I had a sister who was she was like a third parent, right? So she was always the one that got into trouble and keeping me out of trouble.
And is that why you so hands-on with the gun violence thing out there in Brooklyn? Like, I see that you do a lot to reduce gun violence. We do as well. We got a basketball program. We going into the 10th year Boulder Mac Park Summer League where we reduce gun violence. I see that you hands-on with that. Like, that's one of your bigger things. Give me a little bit of insight about that, especially in Brooklyn right now. We know that's like one of the turned-up sections in New York City.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I had a lot of friends. We say they went on vacation, right? We ain't seen them for 3 to 5 or 20 years from vacation. So a lot of people did a bid, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people got caught up on gun charges, either carrying a gun to protect themselves. You can get more time carrying a hammer than actually using it sometimes in the state of New York, right?
Yeah.
So
3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years off
crazy.
rip now.
Mandatory minimums. We were just talking about this in
3
the
to 5
post
years.
a couple of days ago. So for me, seeing how many of my friends were impacted on both sides of the gun, both those who were shooters and those who were getting shot at, it was definitely something that made me feel like it was a place where I had to get involved. I also did a lot of youth development, right? And talking to young people and trying to understand the reasons why they carry guns. Why do they feel like they need to engage in that kind of lifestyle? And I think just being around young people all the time and just being in the mix of things, being on the basketball court, you have a lot of guys who came with their gym shorts and their sneakers. And if you looked, you saw the thing poking out the side of the bag, right? So I think just making sure that we understood how to interrupt that cycle, because we were losing so many people, so many guys who could have been in the NBA, could have been Wall Street bankers, could have been whatever, the next tech innovators, podcast hosts. They just weren't home. They ended up going somewhere else. And I think for me, the focus was how do we disrupt that? And I think as men, particularly black men in this space, we have to figure out how to disrupt the cycle of violence.
Nah, that's definitely dope, man. And I heard you say something about that oomph earlier when it was just like, yo, this is my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Me and Dan speak on this a lot about implants in the community politically.
Yeah.
And they don't really lobby for you the right way. They don't really go hard for you the right way. I could hear the passion in your voice when you telling us this about the youth and everything that you're doing in your community. Explain that oomph thing so, you know, everybody understands how important it is for you to be an elected official where you come from.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Dan mentioned earlier, we were able to bring in more than $1.5 billion to their district,
That's
like in the
crazy.
first 4 years of being here, right? And that's like money for hospitals. We're not talking about the millions of dollars in capital, the millions of dollars invested in nonprofit services. I think the oomph comes from seeing a neighborhood change around me, right? I have a 2-year-old son now. My wife and I grew up, born and raised in this neighborhood. We look at the price of homes. They start at $1.3 million for a starter home in my district, 2.3 if you want to move in ready house, right? So seeing some of these changes around me and seeing people who I grew up with being pushed out and having to move, or feeling like people that they elected, whether it be in city hall or in federal government or state government, don't really come around. They don't really hang out in the block. They don't breathe the same air. They don't shop in the same supermarkets. For me, I took that personal. I wanted to make sure that I never heard anyone ever say that Brian didn't go up there and do the right thing, or Brian wasn't responsive back home. So, I still have people, I tell my staff all the time, make sure you get it done, because they're going to text me anyway. My number has not changed since high school. So I still get the text messages from the corner boy, right, who's still in the corner right now, who's saying he's trying to figure out how to get a job because he had jammed up criminal record, from the single mother who's trying to figure out, like, can you mentor my son because his dad isn't around and he just needs a positive example, or the young couple like mine that are trying to figure out, like, how do we keep our kids safe on the play yard when there's bullets literally flying in the air, right? So for me, it's not New York City, Flatbush, Crown Heights, and Prospect Lefferts Garden is not an abstract neighborhood. That is the bane of my existence, the place that created the person you see in front of you. And not a perfect person at all, right? But somebody who understands the responsibility to that community.
Now that's dope, man.
You mentioned
Dope.
high school. What was there always something in that high school era going into college? What college did you go to?
I was a failure in high school.
Oh.
By the way, yeah. Let's keep it real. Like, in high school, I got left back one year. I couldn't pass the math regions. I was probably a C student. I wasn't like an outstanding student. I knew what I knew. Like, I loved English and I loved history. And I love the idea of money. So I went to college at Brooklyn College, and I went to BMCC first, because obviously when you get held over a year, you got to make some decisions around community colleges. And shout out to BMCC. It was a great starting place. I always say start here, go anywhere. That's their motto, and that's really what they're about. Transitioned to Evers. I learned a little bit. That's our HBCU in Brooklyn, right? That gave me the culture, the pride. And went to Brooklyn College, studied political science there. But that matriculation and that college process was really like finding what I loved. I always wanted to be a A&R for a music label. I always wanted to be a business person. Yeah.
My man,
yeah.
Dan, a music guy.
Yeah, so that was my thing. I really wanted to, growing up back in the days, you saw the people that were making money and had fame and prestige in our neighborhoods were artists. Some we can't talk about no more, obviously, right? Because of situations. But that's what I wanted to do. And then I found out that what I really wanted to do was, it was less about the flash. It was really about, how do I help people, right? So connecting the culture in terms of both the love of hip hop and the struggles that hip hop presents, anchored in faith. We talked about my faith upbringing and being someone who grew up in church. Taking those two things and mixing those two words, I figured out that politics was a way to be a person that was still engaged in the culture, but can do that faith-based work without necessarily being a preacher, right? Like preacher's kid over here, or being a hip hop mogul.
Speak to me about that balance right there, because I believe, like,
that too.
we kind of teeter the fence sometimes, and I'm, I could speak of it guilty of myself. Like, my business partner Dan really kind of showed me the roadmap with it, show me like what not to do, show me what to do. I don't want to say show me how to speak, but when to say certain things in certain situations, right? How much of it to where you could keep it the rugged Brooklyn to where, all right, I gotta sharpen up right now, and I gotta be Mr. Brian Cunningham.
So it's hilarious, right? Because my media director, he's in the car with me a lot of times, and he'll go, I just heard like 10 different people on the phone while we going through it. Like, I'm talking to donors on the phone, right? I'm talking to constituents. I'm talking to people from the block. I think one is being one, you don't change your authentic self, right? The core message is still there. How you communicate that authenticity may be different in certain spots, right? Like, I'm not gonna say, Mr. Speaker, I rise on the floor when I'm on the corner of Flatbush, right? There's a way to comport yourself in a chamber where you're trying to gather the esteem of your colleagues, people from as far as Buffalo to the tip of Long Island, right? And you're trying to make sure that they respect who you are. But sometimes I slip in a little Jay-Z while I'm on the floor. Like, I'll slip in the remarks, like, and they don't realize that that's poetry from the Book of Hov, right? They just realize, well, that was real eloquent. You said that really well. Where did you get that from? And I'm like, Hov, right? And then on the block, I also bring in, I remember this guy, he died, his name was Stacks, who was on the corner for a while. Stacks had a rough coming up, got himself caught up in the life. Stacks got out the life. And then after he got out the life, he actually ended up getting shot. It broke my heart. I remember my wife and I went on our anniversary in LA when I found out he got killed, and man, it tore me up. But I remember talking to Stacks one day, we just vibing, And I was like, have you ever heard of ban the box? And he was like, what's that? And I was like, well, they can't ask about your criminal conviction until after you've been offered the job, and can only deny you the job if it has something to do with your conviction. So you can't be a bank robber applying for a bank job, right? So, but he never knew that. So every time Stack saw me stand with Stack's like, yo, ban the box. That was my name for like a year straight. Ban the box, what's up, right? But I think that's that perspective of like taking policy that happens abstractly in Albany City Hall, the federal government, making it relatable to the streets, right? And then taking the struggle of the streets and making that relatable to folks in Albany. I think that's an intersection that, you know, as Black electeds, particularly Black male electeds, we have to play that fine line of not crossing it. It's a gray area, but I think it's important to stay plugged in and stay in touch with the culture.
Absolutely.
What was your first kind of foot in the game out of Medgar Evers? Brooklyn
College, yeah. So my first job was actually working at Canberra, Church Avenue Merchant Block Association.
Okay.
Yeah, Canberra. People don't realize it was a merchant block association that now does everything from housing services, food, all that stuff. So I worked at after school programs, working with young people, worked there for a while. Then I went to the spot called Empower, focused on technology in the section of young people. And after that, when Empower is one of the only jobs that I've had in the last 20 years that let me go. Right. And one of my struggles was I was a poor writer. And they like, you're great, you're charismatic, you get the work done. But a lot of these emails are going to these corporations. And, you know, when you send in emails that don't fit the tone, you know, and by the way, the guy who fired me is still one of my best friends, right? So it was funny, you had a best friend fire you, but it sharpened me for the next challenge. The next challenge was working for State Senator Kevin Parker as a special assistant here in Albany, right? Going back and forth between Albany and the district, doing the dirty work of like making sure the letters were done, the schedule was done, all those things that, you know, I talk to my staff about now, like the things I learned early in my career. And then from that, I kind of worked in City Hall, became a chief of staff to Lori Cumbo, left that and became aide to President Obama's My Brother's Keepers Alliance, worked in the private sector for a little bit. And then this opportunity presented itself in 2022, like while I was in the private sector, enjoying my life. My wife actually thought we had a great life. I was home early. We had, you know, abundance of resources, but the heart of service and the call of service was so deep in my life that sometimes you do crazy things when you feel like you're compelled to do something. So 4 years later, we're here, and I think we're seeing the fruits of our labor, and we're planting good seeds for our son, who has a name. His name is Senator. So it's obviously a political name, but also a name that just means yeah.
When Lisa was saying before, I'm like, well, who's Senator?
That's my little guy, man. And the whole purpose of the meaning of the name is really not about politics. It's called Old Wise Man, and I want him to grow as an old wise man, even at his young age, really figuring out and being discerning and being able to mediate conflict and being able to know how to code switch responsibly so you can get the message to people.
Now listen, that's genius, man, because he walking into the room already like Senator.
Reservations are easy. Like I'm making reservations in his name, not mine. I'm like, hey, it's Assemblymember Cunningham. I'm like, yeah, we don't got no time. Hey, I got Senator Cunningham. He's two, but he needs a dinner.
Senator Cunningham.
But it's kind of like what Jay did with the calling his son Sir, right? Off the rip. Like he'll understand the name. Like in the Capitol, he's a little confused because everybody's saying Senator, and he's like, "Who are they talking to?" Like they're not calling me Daddy, right? But I think as he gets older and realizes the power of what his name means, I think he'll walk in that purpose and that and not necessarily the path of being an elected official, but the purpose of being someone who people hold in high esteem.
Yeah. So 2022, you get elected. I would say we started coming up into Albany probably 2018.
Yeah. And by the way, I've been dying to get in this podcast. I just want to be honest. Like not just even talking about it. Before we talked about it, I remember sending this to my media guy, getting a couple.
Oh, really?
Like when he first came, was like, "Yo, this is what I'm talking. I want to get on this." Like, so I just want to say shout out to you guys for like really doing this, because a lot of times what happens up here is like, you know, outside of Twitterverse, right? People don't really contextualize our stories in the same way and give the same level of humanity and background and perspective. So really shout outs to you guys.
I'm grateful for this, because we're really
definitely grateful
in a unique position right now to really continue to not only just grow, but package the conversation. And really get to learn and understand and educate our followers and really the youth that we're constantly talking to about how powerful civics is. You know, their role in a civilization. And we have a group of kids coming up tomorrow, over 100 students from Assemblymember Mikael Solange and Senator Sheila Bino that we're working with. And it's a civic mapping game.
Love that.
You know, and it's not just always talking to the elected officials, who's their chief of staff.
Yeah.
Who's your comms? Who's your scheduler?
That's the key part, right? I tell people all the time, like, be nice to my scheduler, because
Yeah.
you may not. I'm never gonna hear about the meeting until you text me,
Exactly,
right? Like, be nice to him, and the media guy might give you a little shout out on our page. You know, it might blow your business up. So I always say the staff is a key part, and I think there's a pipeline that we don't often talk about. Like, people look at government just from the elected perspective, and being elected is its own challenge to get here. It's a challenge to stay here. You constantly running every 2 to 4 years if you in, a local level, maybe 6 years if you're a United States senator. But there's so much people, like, even behind the scenes, like, forget the government side. There's a whole ecosystem behind the government side that's the campaign side. You're talking about pollsters, you're talking about fundraisers, you're talking about people that are doing design work. That's really where a lot of the money that people raise gets spent, right? On that side of the house. And these races cost millions of dollars sometimes. So if people are looking at that, there's certainly an avenue for that.
To 2022, this 4 years, I must say, I think have seen in 4 years the fastest as far as just placing, and you talked about politics. Can you just talk a little bit about, because I think the way that you've been able to position yourself in 4 years, in my opinion, has been incredible.
Appreciate that.
Because it's a lot. How many assembly members is there?
There's 150 assembly members, 103 are Democrats, 47 are Republicans, and there's 63 senators.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I don't know their breakdown over there, but 63, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between politics and governing? And because it's very important when we talk about politics. Drew mentioned this before, but we play ball. I was nicer than Drew. I was tough. And I'm like,
well, come see me on Tuesday. Every Tuesday we play ball down here, so y'all need to pull up.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Jamal Bailey.
Jamal is nasty. I ain't gonna hold you. Like, Jamal is he a good point guard. He bring the ball up.
We had them.
Kevin is all muscle. Like, you want to weightlifting contest, you call Kevin, right?
Ended up missing a free throw.
That's what happened?
Word, I missed it. I tied it. I would have won it, but we tied it, and they went down and scored, man.
Yeah, that's it.
Drew's actually nice, though.
Yeah.
He played ball. He's tough.
He got the James Harden beard. I know what time it is.
But if it's playing ball and you need a team of 5 and you have 6 players, and sometimes that 5 or 6 player may not even be the best, it's just a friend of somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's politics.
Yeah.
Or politics in a workplace, that somebody that gets the raise or the higher level job could not even be the most talented. It's just, again, the relationship. Somebody that's sitting at the bar and had an extra beer with that person and built a different type of camaraderie. And people get confused between politics and governing, and they always look at politics as a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because everybody's always politicking.
Yeah.
It's how do you navigate that? What's the wisdom to learning people, how to work with people to get your district ahead of another district, or to get that billion. Actually, that's how to get $1 billion for your district is massive politics, so then you can govern.
No, I think you're right. I think there's this great quote by Weiwei that says, everything is art, everything is politics. And that's a quote that my wife and I live by. Like, my wife's an executive director for Museum Hugh. She focuses on the arts. I'm kind of focused on the political space. But there's this interesting marriage. Like, even the way we walk, the way we talk, is all art. Right? It's an art form. How we present ourselves is art. How we dress, everything is art. But everything is governed by a system of politics. And politics, to your point, is relationship building, right? And I always tell my staff, one of the things I always tell them, going back to the staff conversation, is, like, there are people who I sit in rooms with now that I began conversations with and relationships with 20 years ago, right? And be able to keep those relationships intact, right? I feel like every single person is an asset. Like, and no one in those rooms, like this week, I have a good example of this, where I was meeting with the CEO and the president of BAM, right? Brooklyn Academy of Music, like one of our big cultural institutions. She was the intergovernmental affair director 20 years ago when I was Lori Cumbo's chief of staff, right? And I was just a chief of staff, not a member yet. Now we're sitting in my office talking about how to bring in millions of dollars for BAM. Like, imagine if we didn't have that kind of rapport and relationship right off the rip. So I think you're right. The political piece of it is really like relationship building. It's like balancing how many nights you're going to go support people and help them with what they're trying to power build on. The governance part is harder, right? But if you have the political capital, it is, right? Because it's easy to pop off politically. It's easy to, it's easy to show up and not bring the goods to the table. Like, I can go hang out at your fundraiser, I can go hang out with you, I can do all the networking. But if there's no follow-up, the government part is the follow-up piece, right? It's like making sure that you're like, hey, Thanks for dinner last week. Would love to pick your brain or talk to you about X, Y, and Z, right? And then try to figure out the win-wins for everybody, right? $1 billion, we did $1.3 billion for Downstate Hospital. That was a win for my district. That was a win for the people that have jobs in my community. But that's a win for the state in terms of, imagine the state closing a state hospital. Like, what kind of egg will be on all of our faces, right? It was a win for the governor in terms of when the governor's running for re-election comes to Brooklyn and talks about, like, not only she gave $1 billion in Buffalo to help with their economic development, but she gave $1 billion in Brooklyn, right? So I think there's so many ways that we try to marriage and merge those two things, but I think the politics and the relationship building gives you the capacity to do the governance, but governance is a lot of compromise, and people think that's a dirty word to, like, oh, you switched up because you compromised. And no, you got to meet people where they are. People in the north part of the country, or the state rather, have different needs from people in central part of the state, different from the southern parts of the state, and you have to also understand where people's safe spots are. So I know I can't get you here with me, but can I get you at least right here with me on this, right? And that's the governing part, is seeing how far you can get that person to the goalpost that you set for yourself and for your community.
Yeah. No, that's powerful, because I think that's one of the hiccups. We were, where we at? Central Islip High School, right?
Yeah.
And they were, one of the kids actually told the other kids, we have our guests here, everyone be quiet. Like, they were in tune.
Yeah.
Ready for, we have a program called Civic Works. It's all about civics, a 12 module program. The first module is about civic identity. So we're teaching them to understanding the civic role in this moment in our civilization.
So I got a question. When you bring into Brooklyn,
well,
when y'all
we
bring
got-
this, like, you know, now I got to get very defensive. Like, this
now. We
this
gotta be in
this the
front.
governance piece. Like, how do I get this to Brooklyn? Like,
yeah. So we Long Island, we've been building
yeah.
slowly and really just making sure we have the infrastructure. And that's why now we're starting to do more in Albany, getting more into the city now. We wanted to make sure that the value was there, so that, when crazy things happen over
Yeah.
and no matter what happens, we still have a value add when we're going into different when you start going into different areas too. You got to make sure, like, now we're building relationships.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So we're not just gonna go to Brooklyn or the Bronx.
Nah, I feel that. I feel that.
And they know that people know we're coming with value, with authenticity. We're not coming to disrupt the structures that are there. We're coming to bring value.
Yeah.
That's big.
I mean, I'll say one thing, and I know my Brooklyn folks don't like to hear it, but Brooklyn's on Long Island.
Well, yeah.
Right? I know that's political. I might get hammered back home for that one, but the truth is, Brooklyn and Long Island are like, people start in Brooklyn, they venture off and get a nice yard and some extra space in good school districts. So
Kings County,
yeah.
Queens,
Yeah.
Nassau, Suffolk.
Yeah, that's it. And that's usually how people move. They move from Brooklyn, they come in and they go right up to the tip where they in the Hamptons. I can't afford that lifestyle yet, so I'm gonna hang out in Brooklyn. I'm gonna hang out in Brooklyn.
Hamptons is too rich for all our lifestyle, man.
Now, Long Island is definitely out of control these days.
Yeah.
But the civic identity, civic role, because you can see the light bulb goes off a little bit, because most of them really don't care about voting.
Yeah.
Or not intrigued. We got to get them attention by some other things.
I love that.
Then by the 12th module is how you aligning that civic identity with their purpose.
Yeah.
What they want to do in life, with what they want to achieve, their dream, their goals, and whatnot. But this specific class in Central Islip was majority Hispanic, so to put it in context.
Yep.
And we asked them about politics, and they all said 100% politicians are corrupt. And it was just bad, like negative. And I was, we were asking them, like, so what is making you feel this way? Obviously, there's a lot that's happening on a federal level, with immigration, ICE, and different things. But I think there's a lack of understanding that no matter what role any of them, we were telling you guys go into, you're gonna have to know yourself well enough to also fight or to provide or to educate your coworkers, your industry, whatever you're doing. It's not just gonna be a straight, narrow road.
Facts. Yeah, and we hear this all the time. Like, you survey 100 people in Brooklyn, you're gonna hear the same thing, right? You go anywhere in the state, you're gonna hear the same thing. I think the challenge is, like, end of the day, people are people, right? You talk about doctors, people talk about doctors who had them paying extra money for the pharmaceutical stuff. You got lawyers who think are unethical. I think at the end of the day, when you have bad actors in the space, obviously these are high stake positions where you can't afford. The margin of error has to be so low given what we're up against, right? But I think at the end of the day, politicians obviously have to respond differently and also show up differently in communities where people feel like, we got their back. Let's talk about, like, when I'm up here in the capital, I may comport myself in a particular way. But when I'm back home, I'm bringing the same information. It may just sound different. Like I may put some extra, Brooklyn in it. But at the end of the day, I'm consistent with who I am no matter where I am.
Yeah. No, that's important. Identity is so key.
It is. I mean, it's why representation matters, right? Like people talk about all the time, like DEI and all this stuff. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is people that look like you representing you, right? People sitting across from you that understand your perspective. And I think that's important. Like, I think everybody wants to be seen, right? Whether you are a white farmer in upstate New York or a Brooklyn kid trying to figure out what life looks like and what examples are around you, representation matters.
Yeah. We're talking about legislative power. So you're the first vice chair of
the association. Yeah, which is different from the caucus. Like people get that mixed up all the time. Like people call this caucus week, and it's really association weekend. So we think about our caucus as our legislative and policy arm. The association. So think about that as we talked about government and politics earlier. The caucus is the government. That is the hard work of getting policy across the finish line. The association is an opportunity for folks all across the state to connect over this next 3 days, right? Yeah. And I would say that's more of the politics of making sure you build those relationships so that we can advance the policies that the caucus is doing. So there's always a confusion around it, but the two work in tandem in many ways. A lot of the members who are on the caucus many are in the association as well. So I think that the real magic is the community that we build out here and the people that we connect with, both in the business sector and the political space.
Yeah, and talk about the policy. So the Caribbean still pay an education act. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's my bill. I'm doing that bill with Senator Kevin Parker.
Okay.
What we have identified.
That's good because you need a senator to also.
Big part of civics, right? Like in the city council, you pass your bill and it goes to the mayor's desk. The mayor signs or vetoes it, right? Yeah. In the state assembly and the state senate, you need a sponsor on both sides of the house. You need to pass both houses in order to get to the governor's desk. This bill is birthed out of like the idea that music classes can be more than just violin and piano. It's a culturally competent bill. Like where I'm from in Flatbush, as you know, it's one of the largest Caribbean districts in the state of New York, right? I won't say which Caribbean island has a bigger population, right? Because people argue between whether it's Drake and Trinidad and Haitians, but the reality is we're saying that whether it be African drums or Caribbean steel pan, that we should use music classes in a way to engage culturally with people so that they can learn that instrument, learn the history of that instrument, and be able to get credit for their music classes, as well as we talked about gentrification earlier and how the communities are changing. Back in the days when y'all were in Brooklyn, you knew that Labor Day weekend was a thing for like the beginning of summer to the end of summer, right? And you heard the steel pan bands that would hang in the pans late at night into the wee hours of the morning in these empty lots. Brooklyn no longer has empty lots. I said houses are going for $1.3 million, right, as a starter home. So people are buying these lots. We're saying these places also need an opportunity to practice. So what better than our school grounds? We have school grounds where we can conceal the noise, make sure people are protected, to be able to practice and use those instruments while making sure that we also embed that curriculum into our schools.
Going back to the music, like you said, right? How impactful is just the rich culture of music from Brooklyn? Like y'all got two of the best rappers that we could say like that's
two of the best, like not of the like the best. We can say it. We can say it.
We got Rakim.
I'm gonna put it on the list. I'm just saying like when we talk about like Biggie's been dead since '96, and when we go to the club, it's like Biggie's still here. Yeah. Like he was a prophet in terms of like the music is still relevant. Right? Jane drop an album in a minute. Like we still on 444 right now. I can keep going, but let's back to your point. My fault. Deviating a little bit.
But yeah, the rich culture that y'all got from Biggie Smalls to Jay-Z, how impactful is that when you speak in situations like that, when you talk about music and school districts and stuff?
Well, look, I'll take it even further than that, right? You think about what music is. Music, the word music derives from to think upon. And from early, you have children who are learning their ABCs, not as A, B, C, but it's taught as a song. So think about how powerful music is in terms of our memorization of things, right? We count the same way. Everything I hear my son in the background saying, right? Literally, like, music is a big part of our lives. And when you think about what Brooklyn has contributed to the music scene, right? Whether it be our Caribbean music or the Caribbean artists like Busta Rhymes is from Flatbush, right? These are global icons that people talk about in the context of being in Japan and Europe and all over the world. So I think Brooklyn and other parts of New York City and state have obviously contributed a great deal to the music fabric. And this is a specific bill for steel pan, but there's no reason why we can't do, again, African drums or Harlem jazz or whatever it is, right? I think there's enough diversity of music and enough things to say that we can include these things to make sure that young people are both culturally relevant, understand their history, and understand the history of others. Because sometimes we talk about history, particularly Black history, through the lens of helping you understand yourself versus, no, this is American history too. We're celebrating 250 years of America and 100 years of Black History Month, but understand that Black folks have been here for the entirety of America and have built America, right? So like making sure we always marry those ideas so that it's not separate, but it's a part of the shared march forward.
I got a question about music. So when Drew said that earlier, because I had an independent record company for almost 10 years out in Jersey. It was actually Jersey club music. So it was 140 BPMs, very fast. The history comes from Chicago to Baltimore to Philly. So it was basically like the, dance music. It's just it's very fast. However, so Brooklyn definitely is impacted with this. Bronx is impacted. Long Island's been impacted. Would love your thoughts on the state of hip hop and just the alignment culturally with how what's happening with young kids now. Drill music, like there's always this conversation back and forth. Is music helping or hurting right now with the young boys and just what's happening?
Look, I think you can always look at any particular era of music and find problematic music, right? I think about some of the stuff that I listen to, and now I'm listening to music like when I was in high school and listening to it in retrospect and saying, whoa, I was saying that in high school, that's a bit much, right? I think it's always context. I think also contextually, we also realize that music always is a reflection of the culture, where the culture is going, a larger culture. It's not just a reflection of that particular subset. So I think the question is what's happening in America, right? And what's happening globally, why the music sounds the way it sounds. And I think that's a mirror for us to kind of look at ourselves and figure out why are young people responding. When hip hop came out, right, initially, right, born in the Bronx, me give the Bronx take credit, right? But part of that was artists talking about the struggle as young people. The music today is also still a reflection of that. It may sound different from what they produced in the Bronx in those early days of hip hop, but the spirit of it and the spirit of what young people are trying to communicate is embedded in that. And I think we have to look at that as a culture and figure out how we're showing up for young people where their music is going to sound different, not tell them to make it sound different.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. Brooklyn, obviously, as a borough in New York City, is a huge shift with a new mayor, Zoran Mamdani, and there's a couple of policies that he's looking to implement, one by a pretty large majority. How is that, with your role representing Brooklyn, the 43rd district in Albany, and with the new mayor, like how are you navigating all that realm? Because I'm sure it's a lot of new energy.
Yeah, well, let me say this. I am so proud of our new mayor. Obviously, Zoran was up here just a year ago.
I keep forgetting that. That's right.
Right, he was sitting in the chamber just like us, like he was 1 in 150. And at the time when Zoran, it was funny because we have this thing called conference. We have press conferences. When I listen to his campaign trail, and I reflect back on his time here in Albany, he's been practicing for a very long time, his pitch, right? He's been talking about the same issues, which I think is really important to understand that he didn't just arrive here because polling data said that this was a thing, right? So one, happy to see where he's arrived in his career in a very short time in Albany. But also, one of the things I know about Zoran, he's always been an honest broker. Whether you agree or disagree with him, he's always willing to listen. And I think that's going to bode the city very well in terms of somebody who understands how Albany operates, understand where the funding sources come from. He was just here this week for 10 Cup Day, asking the legislator for resources for some of the projects he has and sharing some of his ideas. But I think he also is someone who understands how Albany works. And I think he's going to push Albany and the state and the federal government to do more, but also understands the balancing act that one must play. He represents 5 counties in the state of New York. We have 63 counties in the state of New York, right? And we still have to balance the priorities for the other parts of the state. And I think he understands that, but he's not going to stop pushing us for the agenda, particularly universal childcare, which again, as the father of a 2-year-old, like I brought my kid on set, right? He's literally around the building somewhere. But that's important because there's so many parents who don't have that privilege that I have to just bring my kid on set or bring my kid to the office. They parents who literally have to decide who's staying home, right? I know the second biggest check I write every single month, right, is for childcare after my rent, right? So if people are making these financial decisions every single day, and policymakers, we find ourselves on the younger tier now making the same decisions, we have to respond with urgency and efficiency in state government.
Well, that universal child care, I've always trying to clarify, is that starting at 2 years old? What's the tweak that we're looking?
Yeah, so there's a couple of tweaks, right? A couple of years ago, under Mayor Bill de Blasio and then Governor Andrew Cuomo, we had started and implemented 3K, right?
Okay.
Which was a given 3K. We saw that really take off in the city of New York, but we saw throughout the state that some of the parts of the state are still lagging behind. What the governor's proposed in this budget is essentially allowing the other parts of the state who have not caught up with 3K to fully implement 3K, right? So that if you're 3, you have access. So everywhere north of Albany. In the city, we're saying let's dig a little deeper and start kids at 2, like, because the science and studies show the earlier kids learn and grow, the faster they'll get up to grade level, right? Which I'm also carrying a bill called high impact tutoring, which helps get kids on grade level and math scores. And then beyond that, it also helps with some of the infant care stuff so that kids can start daycare as early as 3 months. People say, why do we start in New York City? New York City has a population of 10 million people. The state has a population of 22. So I said 5 counties, the 5 boroughs, have a population of almost 10 million people. The rest of the state has 22 million people, right? So we could see where the concentration is, and we know if it could work in New York, it'll work throughout the rest of the state. And again, to Governor Hochul's credit, when she was lieutenant governor a couple of years ago, she was on the child task force. So she started implementing and talking about some of these policies years ago. I think it's incredible to kind of see a governor and a mayor who are getting along. That's going to be well for New York City. It's going to do well for New York State. So I'm excited to see how that relationship plays
It's
out.
an interesting time right now.
Yeah, we have not seen this in a long time. We know that Governor Cuomo and Bill de Blasio did not famously get along. We know that Mike Bloomberg did not always get along with Albany as well. So to have 2 of our most high-profile elected officials from the city and the state getting along with a common target, obviously, which is, I think, what's happening in Washington, and saying we're going to protect New Yorkers, whether they're in New York City or wherever in the state of New York. I think it's an exciting time for the state. We should embrace that and be happy to see unity.
Yeah, and that's a fact. A couple of questions before we wrap up. Complete the sentence. Politics becomes power when
people are involved. Right? It's so easy to be up here and be in a bubble. Like, we read city and state, we read the bills, but if the people aren't involved, like I said, the whole premise of Association Weekend is to take a lot of the ideas we're doing here in Albany and bring those to the people so that people can go back to every corner of the state and push those policies. And that's how you really win the day, is by having people involved in the process.
I love that. What message would you give to a young person in Flatbush or Crown Heights who thinks politics doesn't apply to them?
Pull up in my office. Like, it applies to you when you talk about the speed limits, the resources you see in your neighborhood, the small businesses that show up. Like I said earlier, everything is art, everything is politics. I firmly believe that, and I know that sometimes it feels disconnected because you're looking at people that sometimes disappoint you, but you look at how far we've gotten because of people who've put things in place from a stakeholder perspective and a policy perspective, and I think that's really important.
What's one bold policy idea you're championing or thinking about that people aren't talking about yet?
There are 3. Can I do 3?
Yeah,
just one.
Yeah.
I mean, one, I talked about high impact tutoring. I think there's nothing better. Again, whether you graduate college or decide that college isn't for you, I think everybody knows the importance of reading and writing at grade level and doing math at grade level, and that's AI won't replace that, right? The other piece is faith-based affordable housing, making sure that we create more housing for people, right? And that's like a 2-pronged approach. It's like faith-based of creating supply of housing, but I also have this other bill called CMI, Community Medium Incomes, which really targets zip codes to figure out what people make in those zip codes. Because I'm just
rather than AMI.
Yeah, because AMI is crazy. Like
that.
Long Island, Westchester, we know y'all getting it over there. Y'all getting the money. Y'all getting to the bag.
Nah,
but in Brooklyn, we struggling right here. There's parts of my community.
Bad.
Yo, that's us in Long Island.
Yeah,
It's bad.
Yeah, so
Communities that we're from is impoverished.
yeah, and I think that's the key. Like, looking at those hyper locals. So I'm focused on that bill.
You need
And
Incomes, CMI as opposed to AMI.
is that a new thing?
That you know, I ain't gonna lie. I got it from President Obama. It was something he was trying to do on the federal level for a while.
Never heard of
Never
that.
an appetite. So Congresswoman Clark is carrying that on the federal level. I'm carrying it on the state level. I'm gonna see if we can get a city to pick it up. I think we can really get some steam behind
love
this.
that.
I think that's the real first step, right? Because if you don't do that, people are always gonna ask the question: affordable for who? I don't make 106 over AMI, and what do these numbers even mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is what I make. This is what the average number of people in my neighborhood makes. Why, when we put state subsidies and city zoning, right, into these projects, that people from my neighborhoods can't apply and get it?
Yeah.
So we're fast tracking gentrification. We're putting down steroids and then saying, well, I don't know why we can't get people from my neighborhoods in these houses.
Yeah.
Economics aren't keeping up, so we got to meet them where they are. And the last thing is, obviously, I have a Waymo bill. You're going to see Waymo around here this week, the autonomous driving vehicles. I think, one, is futuristic, right? This is where the world is going. I started by saying my father's a cab driver, so I'm not trying to put people out of work, but I am saying that we need to see a reduction in accidents. It provides additional safety, and something I'm really excited to see have a conversation on. And you'll see a couple of cars moving around here this weekend. So if you see one, jump in one.
No, that's dope.
I ain't doing
That's
it.
dope.
It's a driver in it. Right now, we still legally have to have a driver.
okay. I'm about
The
to
driver's
say-
there just to grab the wheel just in case.
I'm not doing it.
But yeah, maybe we should be jumping in together.
I got in one before in the Jaguar. They got them in the A.
Yeah, they all over Atlanta, all over Arizona.
okay.
I mean, so many places are doing it. California, New York City would probably be the densest population
That's
that
tough.
we ever do it in.
Yeah.
Because, people, I mean, as a driver myself, I have a partially autonomous vehicle. I have a Tesla. But when you're driving in the city, like, to see the way the computer works, it shows you people I can't see in my blind spots, the car picks it before I do. And it really has helped save a lot of people from getting into bad accidents and distracted driving.
I have two more. I don't know if you have
Yep.
anything, Drew.
No, go ahead.
You got to pick one. Jay-Z or Obama?
Obama.
He thought you was about to say Biggie. You see? He
Yeah, I was ready for it, but I mean, you gotta go with Barry, man. I mean, just think about what the man has done. Still the only black president we've seen in our lifetime. Someone who carried the role with class, and, just like a different kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Jay loves him, right? So like, I don't think I'm missing that. And I think what was the interview when Jay said $50,000 or dinner lunch with him? Take the money.
Yeah.
I'm taking Obama. My money's on Obama.
I love that. Actually, I got two more now because I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I got one. Yeah.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
What part of Brooklyn to you is most influential?
Flatbush.
Flatbush. Why? Like, you gotta give me reasoning behind that. Biggie from Bed-Stuy, Jay-Z from Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
No,
That's a lot
Jay-Z
of-
from
Jay-Z from Bed-Stuy.
Word?
Jay-Z from
Jay
Bed-Stuy.
from Bed-Stuy, from Marcy.
Yeah, Jay-Z
Marcy,
from
that's-
Bed-Stuy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you think about Flatbush from the intersectionality of all the cultures that exist in Flatbush, right? And how sometimes we feel like people can't coexist, but Flatbush is a great example of how you have traditional working class Americans from the South, Caribbean Americans. I think the culture and the richness of Flatbush, it was Victorian Flatbush, the Dutch lived in Flatbush, now it's Caribbean Flatbush, it's morphing into gentrified Flatbush. It's just been through so much history, and through all those shifts and changes, the community has been one of those communities that people have always wanted to live in. So I'm always going to be a Flatbush. And by the way, the most historic figure in the world was born in Flatbush. Brian Cunningham. Talk to me.
That was actually the last one.
Talk to me.
That's one of the last ones I'm gonna end off with. But I am curious now, sports related. Like, Kobe, LeBron, or Jordan?
That's an easy question.
I mean, you just
Jordan.
81.
see, I would not have
Kobe.
expected that.
Now, listen, I think
Easy?
LeBron is the most physically gifted player in terms of his body, his size, the things he could do at that site. 6'8", 220, 230. Jordan had the best hands in the game, but Kobe's the most skilled player. He wasn't gifted with the same hands or the same body LeBron was given, but what he had, he worked his ass off. Excuse my French, but I think anybody who has to work at it more than anyone else, I'm gonna give him an edge. And for me, again, early in the segment, we talked about me being a C student. The C student brought home over $1.3 billion in Brooklyn. It wasn't what I was given. It was how you work with what you got.
yeah.
So I'm always going with the skill.
So I'll finish off with that. Actually, what are you telling 17-year-old Brian Cunningham?
You are worth it. Yeah, there's been moments in my life where I've second-guessed myself, second-guessed the road I've taken, tried to figure out whether or not people be proud of me, whether or not, trying to always impress people. It's just like, be calm. You're going to be all right. You're worth it. And you're going to be okay. In fact, you can be better than okay. Yeah.
Love it, man. You're definitely worth it.
Appreciate it.
Definitely worth it from the policy and culture family, just from our interactions. Always showed a lot of love.
Always.
A lot of good energy,
Always.
natural energy. So we appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Again, for joining us today. And thank you.
Let's do it again soon.
43rd District, Mr. Brian Cunningham.
Appreciate
That's a
you.
fact.
Thank you. Yeah.